there's become a huge boom in people breeding for the wrong reasons, breeding animals that aren't really healthy, and setting people up for a lot of struggle, a lot of major vet bills, a lot of heartbreak. There's a lot of lack of good information on the internet. There's a lot of noise of things that people talk about that don't really make as much impact as they think or want it to. Why do we really spay dogs? Why do we really recommend these things? How do we prevent parvo? It's expensive to have animals and expensive to have veterinary care, and how important it is. Those are the things that I think that people really need to understand.
Welcome back to the Pause and Effect podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kara, and it is great to have you here again today. If you are new to the show, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, or review us. It helps grow our community and ensures more pet lovers and professionals find these conversations. A quick thank you to Stitch for the scrubs I'm in today. They're a staple here at Hillcrest Vets, sharp, practical, and unbelievably comfortable, especially on those long days. My guest today is Dr. Skylar Duck, a passionate veterinarian who followed in her mother's footsteps. We're exploring what that journey looked like for her, how legacy shaped her career, and what it's meant for her identity as a vet. We also talk about the modern challenges of being in this profession and how she connects with her audience online and the topics she's most driven to speak about. Whether you're in vet med or just curious about the people behind the profession, there is lots of heart and insight in this episode. So welcome to the Pause and Effect podcast. This is Dr. Duck. Thank you. You're all the way in the US. What time is it there for you now?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. It is now 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in South Africa. So thank you very much for starting nice and early. Have you got consults today? What does a normal day look like for you?
Yeah, so I do emergency. So lately I've been on the weekends mostly. So right now I'm off today. So it's my time to catch up on sleep and everything around the house.
Absolutely. So I checked in before, and we are going to have a bit of a discussion on your journey. How long have you been in practice? When did you qualify?
So I graduated in 2018, and I went to The Ohio State University. So I've been practicing for about 7 years, and my focus has always really been on emergency since I graduated. I really found a love for emergency medicine when I was in vet school. I worked at a specialty hospital where I had the opportunity to work in all the specialty departments. I was kind of like a float assistant, and I was always drawn to the emergency room just with all the excitement and just so many variety of cases and kind of getting to explore all different directions. So that's kind of my true love in medicine, but that's what I've been focusing on mostly. So I initially started at a mixed practice where I did primary care and emergency medicine, and then kind of did relief for the past 4 or 5 years or so. So I did a mix of general practice and emergency. So I got to see a little bit of everything. I worked at over, I think, 60 hospitals across 5 different states. So I got to see all different sides of different areas and kind of explore different ways of doing things. So I really enjoyed that. And then I recently started at a veg ER for pets. So one of the newer emergency hospitals that's open concept. And I've been really enjoying that. So that's kind of my newest ventures lately.
And what is it that you love about the emergency work? Why do you think you're drawn to it?
I really like the excitement of either being able to figure out kind of which direction things are going and help people when their animals are kind of in crisis. I think I really just enjoy the being able to kind of start from scratch and figure out kind of which direction things are going and what problems they're having to try to kind of isolate down which direction we need to go. So I really just enjoy the variety and also being able to help people when they really need it and their animals are in that dire state of needing help right now.
I agree. I mean, I did emergency work for 8 years, and I don't think I would have continued with night shift had it not been for the true love of emergency work, because I agree with you. Every case, as much as you're seeing case repetition in terms of, could be another hit by a car or gastric torsion, every case is different. And then that sort of adrenaline that you're working on can be quite satisfying. So, no, I understand. So you're talking to another person who loved that kind of work. So your journey started actually a long time before you went to vet school, because you are the daughter of a veterinarian.
Yes.
Well, tell me, I mean, I have a son, and when people go, oh, so you're going to be a vet like your mom, he says, absolutely not. So you can go one way or the other. What was it about your mom being a vet that inspired you?
So having my mom as a veterinarian just really allowed me to experience veterinary medicine from a really early age. My first memory was helping a little Chihuahua puppy that had a broken leg that she brought home. And she not only was a vet that did a lot of relief work and owned her own practice, but she also brought a lot of her work home. So she would bring animals that needed like hospitalized care or needed, extra attention. We had a lot of foster rescue animals that she ended up taking in when their owners couldn't afford treatments, and she would just take them on and we'd foster them and try to fix them and then find homes for them. So working with her really allowed me to see that there's so much you can do to help. And I really just loved the animals, loved helping, and just seeing the impact I could have with it. So really it was pretty natural for me. Anytime that she had an opportunity where I could get involved, I was there. She ended up buying her own practice when I was 10 years old. So I spent a lot of my time at her practice, and we would hang out and, do our own thing. But anytime there was like a surgery or anything interesting going on, I would be up there watching and learning. And I really just took every opportunity I could to see what was going on. My brother was the complete opposite. He's the other way of not wanting anything to do with it. But for me, it was just a natural passion, and I just loved soaking up every second I could. And I would go to vet conferences with her. I would go to work with her. We also had a horse farm I grew up on. So we were always around animals, even outside of veterinary medicine. So it really is just her love first, and she gave it to me. And I really just have soaked it in and enjoyed every opportunity I've had.
Oh, what I would see as a great advantage. Was there ever the additional pressure because your mum was a veterinarian? I mean, were people aware at, say, vet school that you had that, what some people may perceive as an advantage?
I think the pressure mostly was getting into vet school because it's so competitive, and I knew there was nothing else that I wanted to do. So I was completely focused on how do I get into vet school. So I started planning my career from like the time I was in middle school. So I had all my high school classes planned out. I had everything, staged out to do it. So I was really focused on, that was my only goal in life at that point, was getting into vet school, being able to be a vet, because there was no plan B. That was all I wanted to do. So I really strategically planned out my AP classes and was able to get myself to a point where I could apply early. And I was able to get into vet school early, which was awesome, completely unexpected. But that was part of me just like planning and being really worried about not being able to do it, and knowing that was the only thing that I knew I wanted to really do in life. Once I got into vet school, it was a little bit of pressure to be the person that had a mom as a vet, just because a lot of people knew my background, and I did get into vet school early. So I was kind of a unique person in vet school. But I just really took advantage of it because it's my true love. And I just was excited to be part of a really smart group of people, and people from all different backgrounds doing the same kind of focus and all becoming vets together.
Oh, that's wonderful. And how would you say, because I mean, I think it's great that you had the benefit of actually seeing the reality of being a veterinarian. I think often, when students or people who are applying for vet school who think they want to take on this as a profession get a little insight into some of the, say, work experience that they may get an opportunity to do, they see a very small, manageable, maybe inspiring period of time, but they don't actually see the long working hours, the pressure, the financial. We can have a whole podcast conversation about that. But I think obviously having a vet mom, particularly one who had her own practice, showed you warts and all. Really, you got to see exactly what you were getting yourself into.
Absolutely. Yeah, I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. I knew it was a hard road. I knew it was long hours. I saw how much time and effort and work that she put into it. It was definitely not an easy path, and I knew that from the beginning. from getting into vet school being difficult to working as a vet to all the responsibility that comes with owning a practice and doing the extra things with it. Yeah, I knew the reality of it. I was very aware of the difficulties of dealing with the sad cases, of dealing with people in both clients and working with other staff members and things, and just all the different added stress that goes with that. But I was very wanting to learn, wanting to understand it as best as I could. And I felt like it gave me an advantage because I got to see kind of her work through all these things, from an early age. And it just made me, want to learn more, want to figure this out, and kind of gave me a way to go into vet school, go into becoming a vet, a very realistic perspective, which I think that was an advantage because I think a lot of people did go into vet school not fully understanding what they were getting into. And I never felt that way. I've known what I was getting into, and I knew that was the thing for me, no matter the challenges that came with it.
Hey there, pet parents. It's Dr. Kara, the ultra pet vet here. Brachycephalic, meaning short-muzzled dogs, have uniquely shaped jaws that can make picking up and chewing normal kibble really difficult. That's why UltraPet has created a kibble specifically designed for easy pickup. It contains glucosamine, chondroitin, and green lip muscle extract to help support your dog's joints so that they stay mobile and active. The inclusion of beet pulp and prebiotics helps support a healthy gut by promoting the growth of beneficial bacteria in the digestive system. Omega-3 and 6 fatty acids promote a shiny coat and a healthy skin. UltraPet offers a 100% money-back guarantee. Try UltraPet's premium recipe for short-muzzled dogs today. And how you were exposed to this so very young. How has it helped you manage clients and your patients maybe in a way that your colleagues struggle with?
I think it helps me be more realistic. I've seen so many different ways of handling things, and I've seen so many different backgrounds and different socioeconomic places and areas and people that I've been able to work with. So I think it's given me a broader perspective on different ways of managing cases, of helping people, of approaching things, and trying to set people up for their expectations to be realistic for their individual situation. So I think it does give me a little bit more of a toolbox to work from, where I can help to kind of pull out those experiences that might not be the same as other people have had if they haven't had a lifelong time of working with these kind of situations.
Yeah, very much so. And obviously the profession has changed in so many ways, and some of great benefit to us from a mental health perspective. What are some of the things that you have identified with your mom that you say, gosh, this is so different to the way we used to practice, or this is not how we used to do it? Are there conversations that you have that sound like that?
Absolutely, yeah. So veterinary medicine has changed drastically in the past 30 years that she's been practicing. So I've really seen the shift in that too, because I've been there to witness a lot of it and be part of it. But really it's changed from, really no emergency medicine. You're on call, you're doing mixed animal, like kind of doing a mix of everything. When she started out, she did mixed animal and did all sorts of things and had a lot more time that was expected of her to be on call or doing things. So that's really shifted more to having a better balance, where now we do have the emergency hospitals pretty widely available. We have specialty, we have, kind of more avenues for people to pursue for kind of working up things. There was a lot less of the advanced care, specialty, emergency, especially accessible for most people. So we've talked about that a lot, of how things have really shifted, and now, medicine is so different, and now we get to do a lot more, and people are willing to do more too, as part of it as well. Animals have really shifted their relationship with people in the world, and now they're more like people's children, more like people's true, family versus it being the family pet. And so that's really shifted in what people want to pursue and want to do things. So that's also led to a little more work-life balance for vets, that we're able to offer these resources and things to people that weren't available before, when there was really just your main vet, and they did all the animals, they did everything. So I think it's a positive change, but it's definitely a difference. And we're trying to talk about, like, how do we integrate that? How do we, bring a lot of this experience from old practice where we were able to do, different things to help that might not be what we call gold standard today, but they were able to do things that helped animals and got them to the point where they were better. And a lot of times we've forgotten a lot of those, ways of doing things. And we're more like focused on the gold standard and how do we do the best possible medicine. But there's the whole idea of spectrum of care. And I think a lot of those older ways of doing things kind of falls into that of, it's kind of cool to bring that experience in from people that have been doing this for so long before all that was available.
I totally agree. And in terms of client expectations, that has obviously, like you said, from the bond created, people seeing them as family members or even as children. We see the fur babies. How does your mum? How do you take that? Do you see that as a positive? You think that there is more investment, and then it is easier for us to then be working up cases, and people are wanting and expressing that desire, or do you think that puts more pressure on us as veterinarians?
I think it goes both ways. I think it is good that people want to do things and they have the, desire and, they want to put more into pursuing specialty, doing major workups, doing these kind of more advanced procedures. I think the downside a little bit is that a lot of people don't have a realistic perspective on animals and their lifespan and what it really means to have animals. There's a lot of people that are getting into animals kind of in the most recent, decade or so. So most of them that are those newer pet owners have only had, maybe one or two pets. And so it's once you have multiple pets over and over, you start to see that this is a chapter of your life. They're unfortunately not going to live long enough to be like your true children. And that's the hard thing, is that a lot of people have a hard time letting go is the biggest thing. And it's good that they're able to pursue things, but I think there's a balance of understanding what's realistic and prioritizing quality of life and what's really best for that animal in those situations. And that's kind of where you have to kind of find that sweet spot of what are we doing that's best for the animal, that's best for the people, while still pursuing things when it makes sense, but not always doing everything to the nth degree just because it's available.
I totally agree with you. I mean, you feel really strongly, and you talk about this quite a lot, about empowering pet parents. What are some of the things that you try and do, through your social media accounts and through YouTube? You try and provide information. What is the need you feel that you're trying to meet?
I think there's a lot of lack of good information on the internet for what pets really need and what really makes a big difference. There's a lot of noise of things that people talk about that people get sucked into that don't really make as much impact as they think or want it to. The biggest things like preventing the major emergencies. Why do we really spay dogs? Why do we really recommend these things? How do we prevent parvo? Those are the things that I think that people really need to understand. And where we may have in the past, gone out and got a book of, how to raise a dog and everything, and that gives us all our information. Now on the internet, there's a lot of mixed messaging, and it's hard for people to know what to believe, what to trust, what to prioritize. So that's kind of the information that I'm trying to get out there and trying to empower pet parents to understand is these are the things that really matter. These are the things that are going to really help your pet have the best life. And part of that is trying to find a healthy animal to begin with. There's become a huge boom in people breeding for the wrong reasons, breeding animals that aren't really healthy, and setting people up for a lot of struggle, a lot of major vet bills, a lot of heartbreak. And that's really hard to see as well, because these are things that we should be kind of preventing and working to help avoid from the time before they're even breeding these animals and producing these puppies. And so that's one thing that I really would like to get more information out on too, is how do we prioritize finding the right healthy animals that will really give you the best chance of having a good life with them, because really otherwise you're going to be struggling and have to work through a lot of chronic issues that we see over and over.
So what is some of the information that you put out there to try and mitigate some of these risks? I mean, give us an example of some of the key messages that you try and get out on selecting the right pet.
So really just about finding people that are breeding, that are doing health testing. I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to be prioritizing. And a lot of people don't realize how to actually look for a healthy pet. How do you actually pick out a dog that, one, fits your lifestyle, that fits your actual, day-to-day, and then also finding people that prioritize health when they're producing puppies and breeding. So really how to find, are there health testing done? Have they actually looked at the parents? Are they having chronic issues? Are they able to breathe properly? Do their legs, are they straight? Are they going to have joint problems? So really just looking at what are the things that we look at for health, and it not necessarily needing to be like a top quality show animal, but more so what's going to set you up for health. So those are kind of the messages that I try to focus on is, how do we find healthy animals? Where do we source them? Where to really avoid finding unhealthy animals, because it's so easy if you search the internet that you find places with lots of reviews of lots of people getting these animals, and it seems like it's reputable. And then we see them coming in with major problems and life-threatening things that is really heartbreaking when they didn't know to begin with.
I know. And I mean, I used to encourage owners to come via the practice before even arriving home. But having practiced that, it's already too late. Mm-hmm. It's already too late. I've picked up cleft palates or retained testicles or hernias that I've gone, well, you may want to consider whether this is a puppy you want to keep. And they're like, you can't even suggest that at this point. It's too late. Yes. So I totally agree, getting the information out there before you even go about selecting, say, the breed, because there are so many beautiful breeds that are endearing. They've got big eyes, they've got squish faces, perhaps. Those are cute. And I think even as veterinarians, my colleague and I were saying the other day, like, it's difficult because we obviously know that these breeds really struggle, but we also find them cute. Mm-hmm. So, it's relating with owners to say, we agree they are very cute, but what you need to be aware of is that this is going to impact your life either financially or emotionally or physically when you can't do X, Y, Z because, say, your dog has a respiratory issue or has hip issues and is painful when walking. So I think you are absolutely right in trying to get the message out there before even getting to your vet with that dog. But obviously we end up in a situation where we need to manage what owners often have, and whether that's a rescue or a puppy. And some of the stuff that you have out there is so informative, particularly around, sort of having a thriving pet in your household. Take us through some of the things that you find or common misconceptions that you try to tackle on your social media account.
So a lot of people just, don't know exactly how things work as far as, why do we recommend spaying, avoiding pyometra, avoiding mammary tumors, avoiding these things. How to prevent parvovirus, but also socialize your puppy. How do we mitigate that risk and make sure that we're doing the right thing and trying to balance the pros and cons of really trying to balance real life, and why we need to figure out, where are the real risks? How do we really avoid that? And what do we do to make sure that we're setting you up for the best life with your dog? I think it's really important to understand the breeds, where they come from, and why they kind of work the way they do, because there's a lot of differences in what they need mentally and physically. And you see a lot of behavior problems and, dogs that are destructive and end up with foreign body obstructions and things because people don't understand their true needs. So part of it is understanding, where the breed's coming from, how to really understand how your dog works and their brain and how they're kind of set up to function, avoiding the risks of the big things. I mean, parvovirus, pyometra, dog bites. I think those are things that understanding the risks, understanding, that these are things to avoid and how to avoid them and how to safely manage this is important. And really just the big things that we can prevent and can avoid. And a lot of it's just primary care, general practice kind of medicine, but it's understanding why these things are important. How does this protect your family? How does this protect your pet? Those kind of things, and making informed decisions, because a lot of people, I think, feel like they're being taken advantage of or don't understand the reason why we recommend things. So that's kind of my main focus, is trying to explain this is why it's important and this is how it benefits you, how it benefits your pet. And this is why we're recommending what we are, because we really want what's best for you and your pet.
How do you approach the conversation about nutrition, particularly around the desire to try particular diet trends like the raw food diet?
Diet is really tough. I think that's one of those things that's become so extremely controversial. And it's one of those things that I think is at the point where it's basically like politics and religion and how controversial it is with people. And you really can't change people's mind a lot of times because they become so passionate and so focused on it. I think that, one thing that's important is understanding that how we approach care for dogs, animals in general, it should be individualized. They're all so different. They're all such a variety of background and sizes and everything. And the way that they're raised, their household they're in, there's as much variety in households as there are people and animals. So I don't personally support the raw diet. I wouldn't do it myself. But I think if you're doing it the right way, if you're sourcing it from quality sources, if you are confident and passionate that that's what's best for your pet, and you feel like it's something that we can do complete and balanced and make sure they get all their nutrients, I support the pet owners and what they think is best for their pet. Now, of course, I think that there isn't a one size fits all for any of this. I really support the cooked, homemade, or manufactured kind of diets that are more fresh. I think those are good choices. I think there's just a lot of good choices for different animals, and trying to make sure that people find what's best for them, what's best for their animal, and support them in that, because there's no point in arguing against people when they have a strong opinion on something with that, but just trying to help them do the best that they can for that particular choice in nutrition.
What do you feel most passionate about educating owners on past the setting yourself up for a new dog, especially in terms of managing, in terms of emergency type situations?
Yeah, I think setting yourself up for success with a new dog, a lot of it is understanding the problems for your particular breed and how to avoid those. I think there's a lot of people that just see that, there's a dachshund, all dachshunds are like this. And they don't realize that it really takes specific breeding to make that dachshund what you read online that dachshunds are. They're not all going to be the same if we're not specifically going for those traits. So I think the biggest thing that I would like people to understand would be, why we worry about certain health issues in certain breeds, how to find people that are focused on avoiding those, how to look at a dog and tell that they're unhealthy, how to tell that their nose is pinched or, different things are going on that if you understand and learn about it, you can try to avoid that. And then also, really avoiding parvovirus and some of the major things that can happen early in life that is really heartbreaking when people bring home a new puppy and it's 2 days later and they're hospitalized and fighting for their life. So how to avoid those situations by making sure that we're knowing how to vet the right places and what to look for, what to avoid, and ultimately being empowered to make a good decision that's going to have a long-term impact as well as setting you up for success.
And how do you approach the owners who are fearful of vaccinations and feel that we're over-vaccinating our pets?
That's a tough one. I think a lot of people are fearful of vaccines because of what's going on in human medicine and a lot of shifts that have happened with that. And I understand their fears. I think that there is some reason to be weary of what's going on with medicine in general. But I think it's understanding the why of, why are we doing this, why we recommend it, that our vaccines aren't the same as human vaccines, and that these are, things that are really beneficial and that have been really proven to make a big difference in the success. Also talking about, separating vaccines out, not always doing them at once, kind of separating them into different visits to make sure that we're not overwhelming their system. I'm a big proponent on, not giving a ton of vaccines at one time if we can, and, playing what's safe for that pet and what the owner's comfortable with, and prioritizing the most important ones. So, if they're really not wanting to do all the vaccines, I think it's something that we talk about. Why do we do the December parvo vaccine? Why do we do the Bordetella vaccine? Why do we do these things? And talking about, is this a real risk for your pet? Is this something that we can weigh the benefit and risk and decide if it's really worthwhile? But it's ultimately getting the pet owners on board, because we are a team, working together for them. And if they're not comfortable with what we're doing and feeling like that we're not on the same side, we're not going to get anywhere to help the animals.
I totally agree with you. And I think that's making a big difference, having that kind of approach. How do you choose what to share online, and how do you assess the impact of how it's resonating?
It's tough. I mean, online work is kind of a new thing for me. Of just trying to figure out how to approach it, how to go about presenting information, different formats and different ways of doing things. So it's been a lot of trial and error for me of just trying to figure out what's the best way of presenting information and getting things out there. So it's still definitely a work in progress of trying to figure out how to do this, what makes sense. And I think the hardest part for me is I'm trying to give people information that they don't know they need. And how do I make it appealing to them and interesting and something that, they actually want to read about, because they don't really understand that they're missing that information, a lot of the things that I'm trying to present. So I have been working to try to figure out, how do we make this relatable? How do we make this something that seems valuable? And I still am honestly working on how to do that. I don't have all the answers on it, but it's something I'm passionate about, and I think it's worth the effort and figuring that out, and how to get people on board with that this is something beneficial for them.
Definitely. And is there any post that you put out there and you've been surprised, either in a positive or negative way, by its impact? Anything that you've had feedback on that you've gone, I really did not expect that?
I think the main one I can think of that had a negative response was I put out a video about arthritis management and how there's so many different ways of managing it, from medications to laser to physical therapy. And I mentioned the Librela medication in that. And that's when I had the Librela group of people that are very opposed to it, that have had a lot of really bad experiences with it, kind of jump on that and take over the comments and really, share all their feelings about how opposed they are to it. And that was really eye-opening for me, because at that point I hadn't heard really about those negative effects. And so it really led to me to exploring what that was. And, I got into reading about all their experiences and things. And that was pretty eye-opening for me, because it wasn't something that at that point was widely talked about in the veterinary circles and information that I'd researched. So it was interesting to see that there's a lot of different perspectives out there. And it really helped me learn too, that there's a lot of things that we may not have access to that information in medicine. So it was an interesting experience to get that, but I was grateful that I was able to learn from it and, kind of gain perspective on, maybe there are things we need to take into consideration with some of these things that may not be widely available for us.
Of course. I mean, there's new information coming to light, which is why, we are trained to think critically and think laterally and take information and try and digest it all the time. And we are expected to continue a CPD training. So, yeah, I think you can be forgiven for your for your post, and well done for taking that approach and that attitude about it, because I think we all doing the best we can with the information that we have available. And Librella, I know, was something we were discussing it within the practice the other day, and it is quite a as we were talking religion and politics is just as contentious,
yes,
even within our group of vets. So it was a good example to use. How do you, obviously back to the fact that you had awareness of it well before you even went to vet school, how have you managed your well-being in terms of as a professional, even with little knockbacks of cases that have been hard or client feedback? How do you manage yourself so that you feel that this is going to be a profession that is emotionally sustainable?
For me, it's really important to prioritize disconnecting from work and having a life outside of veterinary medicine. So it's really easy to get fully enthralled and, hang out with people that work in veterinary medicine and talk to my mom about cases and, really get into the weeds of getting really, thinking about it all the time and worried about it all the time. And it does get really draining. We deal with a lot of really emotionally heavy things, and it can be tough to let go and disconnect. But that's been the real key for me is having life outside of veterinary medicine. My husband doesn't work in medicine at all, and he gets really emotional hearing anything about sick animals. So we don't really talk about work at all. So it's good for me to just disconnect, not talk about it, really try to not follow work things when I'm off, and just really focus in when I'm at work and when I'm in the vet mode. But when I'm not, just focusing on other things in life. And having my own animals, they bring me so much joy and they fill my cup as far as happiness and appreciating animals and what they do for us. So I just really try to disconnect from work when I'm not there, have the time away from it to not talk about it or think about it. And that's really kept me fresh and able to be emotionally and mentally and physically there to help animals when I'm on.
I think that's so important. And I think, we reflect back, and your mum may find it also, she relates to this, is that our whole identity, when you were a vet, you're a vet, and there's an expectation, your whole identity is being that vet. And it was very difficult, I think, historically, maybe not having the awareness of saying, like the students and the vets who've been qualified for a short period than I have, to say, I'm more than a vet. I'm a person. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a pet parent myself, as you were saying. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been so beneficial in terms of, like you're saying, the ability to go and rest and separate yourself from the work that you do while still enjoying it when you're there. So it's so valuable. And in terms of your future, are you hoping that you can just find your niche at some point? Have you got something in mind? Are you enjoying the relief work that you do? What do you see in terms of your future, in terms of your path?
Yeah, so I actually just started at the Vet GR for Pets 2 months ago. We just opened a brand new practice really close to me in Texas, and I'm really excited about that. It's been a whole new way of practicing for me, which I think is how I've kind of kept myself fresh and enjoying veterinary medicine as well, is finding new ways of doing things, learning how to push myself. I started doing more surgery again. I didn't do a lot of surgery as relief, but I've been kind of honing those skills and working on that. And practicing an open concept is a whole nother way of growing and learning and doing things differently. So I really appreciated that. And it's really surprised me and how much I enjoy it and how it can really make an impact beyond what I've done in the past. So that's my next thing is learning and getting better at that. And I have a really great hospital, really great team that I work with, and I'm really excited to see that practice grow. Having just opened, we're kind of getting to build it as a team and have it become our own. And so that's kind of the next big thing, is seeing how this practice develops and kind of working together to see what we can make this become. But, that's my main focus at this point. I still am wanting to do the social media thing and wanting to get that information out there, but really helping animals in real life and being at work and learning how to do things more and advance my skills. I mean, they're really, I don't know if you're familiar with Veg, but they're really big on continuing education and growing your skills and pushing us to become the best possible doctors we can. And so I'm excited to see where that goes and what opportunities I'll have and how I can grow further.
That sounds incredible. Yeah, absolutely. I think we all want to be part of something which is supporting whilst allowing you to grow professionally and develop you as whatever niche you want to take. It's a great opportunity, and I wish you well with that. Before we lose the opportunity, I'd love to talk to you about financial limitations, because this is obviously something you have and we continue to struggle with on a daily basis. How do you go about managing clients' expectations, and how do you have the conversation, or how do you approach that conversation when you can see that there are financial limitations and the owner may not be able to afford that care?
Yeah, financial limitations it's such a real problem, and it's so common. It's really, for a vast majority of cases we deal with, there are limitations. So I think the better doctors that we can be in trying to figure out what's going on, how to approach it. It's almost like an extra skill of learning how do we find out the most information with the least amount of data and workup, and really learning to really utilize the lower cost diagnostic tools, like using a PCV, using a blood smear, doing ultrasound, things that are lesser cost overall, but that give us more information, and learning to see and be able to figure out early on what direction this is going and how do we need to approach this. It's such a challenge. I mean, there's no one right way for this. It's really just trying to figure out what works best for that individual. I think the biggest thing that I try to approach is looking at the long-term plan. So maybe we can fix this problem today, but is this going to be something that they can manage for the next 5-10 years of this animal's life? Is this realistic for their situation? And trying not to set them up for something where they put a lot of money into it initially, but may not be able to continue or manage that. So I really try to talk about long-term and think about what that looks like for them, not only in finances and the immediate medical problem, but does it make sense for this person and this animal's life? What other obligations do they have? What does their life look like outside of caring for this animal? Because there's so much to what people have to work through and deal with beyond that. So just trying to give them the best information so they can make an informed decision and give them all the options. So those are all things that we can talk about initially. And having that communication, I think, is most important. People really appreciate honesty and upfront conversations when we go into these things. So that's really how I try to make it approachable for them, is understanding what is the long-term impact going to be. How do we prioritize getting the most information for the least amount of money? And what can we do to make a difference in treatment? A lot of times we can get caught up in the diagnostic testing of, we need all this information to make a decision, but then we don't end up with any money to actually treat the animal. So trying to prioritize what's going to really make a difference for them, what's going to really, help the animal in the best way. And sometimes that might be having less information than we'd like, but prioritizing what's actually going to help them feel better.
And how often do you advise on encouraging people to either save or insure their pets so that they can manage their financial obligations?
That's a big thing. I really recommend that people plan for finances up front. I don't think a lot of people understand that it's expensive to have animals and expensive to have veterinary care and how important it is. A lot of people just look at the cost of getting the animal. So what is the adoption fee? What does it cost to buy them? And they don't look at what does the care require? What do they need? What are they going to need long-term as far as not only food and supplies, but veterinary care. And when they do get sick, what that looks like. So I really recommend, insurance, saving and planning. And that's part of the informed decisions, is being able to know what is this going to look like? What are they going to need? And being prepared, because there's nothing worse than people not being prepared and really wanting to do everything, but not having the means or ability to do those things. And then that leaves us with our hands tied because we can't help if they don't have the situation set up for us to be able to do that. So I think that's a big part of the conversation is planning, understanding what this is going to look like. I think insurance is really helpful for a lot of people, but you have to know what the actual will look like. I mean, a lot of people get plans from different hospitals and think it's insurance, or they, don't realize that it only covers for emergency or only covers for wellness. And then they get stuck in a situation where things aren't covered. So I do think it's important to have that conversation and have that information available early on so that people can know what they're getting into and plan accordingly.
I totally agree with you, and it's a great approach. Now, one of the things in my final parting question, because I've bombarded you with lots of them today, but the conversation of perhaps it's time. This is something that you probably deal with quite a lot, especially dealing with emergency work, particularly if there are financial, emotional, physical limitations. How do you have that conversation whilst supporting owners in not feeling really guilty about the decision that they make?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things that can be really tough for veterinarians to breach the conversation of, maybe it's time to consider euthanasia as the best option for the pet. And that's something I really am appreciative that we have that ability in veterinary medicine, that we can offer euthanasia and humane passing. I think it's a really, really great thing that we're able to do for animals and for people. But having people get to that point where we're on the same page of that this is the best thing is tough. It's really tough for people. And it's not something that people consider usually initially. So it is something that I do talk about a lot with people when I get to that point where I am concerned that might be the best thing given what's going on. I think that it's a big, it's a tough one to go about. It's a tough one to get to, but I think it's something to understand that it is beneficial in some situations that, we're not going to be able to fix this. We're not going to be able to manage this. And unfortunately, we get to the point where it is better to just help them pass. And it's the main thing for them to be able to feel better. We can't help them feel better otherwise. We can't fix things. But it's something that's going to be the most beneficial for that animal. But I think for a lot of people, it's tough to get to that point. So being able to be honest and open and show that compassion that this isn't something that they're doing against their animal or because they don't love them or because they can't afford it all the time. There's just some situations that we can't fix no matter how much money, no matter how much we put into it. And seeing that up front and being honest. And when we get to that point, making sure that they know that that's a feasible and compassionate option for their pet, I think is important for them to hear from veterinarians especially.
And my final parting question for you, Skylar. What would you say is the one thing you wish owners would know when it came to trying to figure whether the information that they have at their disposal, whether it's from online or whatnot, is credible, is reliable, and that they can follow the advice?
Yeah, I think finding the sources and understanding where they're coming from and what their interests are. I've seen a lot of people putting out videos that seem very credible and they seem very strong, opinionated, but it's a lot of selling a product. And so a lot of that information is skewed to sell their product. So I think really looking into who's saying that information, where is that coming from, what is their motivation, and what is their credibility? How do they have this information? Where are they coming from with it? There's a lot of anecdotal information out there where someone had one animal not respond well to something and they're just the loudest voice. And so they have a lot of reach with what they're saying. They have a lot of information out there that might really be skewed to their one situation. But it's really important to make sure you're finding people that have credible resources, that have studied this information, that have your best interest in mind, which can be really hard to find right now. it can be really, mixed up in a lot of other information that seems like it's good, but just because it's the loudest voice doesn't mean it's always right. And it's important to listen to veterinarians, to listen to the people that really understand the background of this and understand that, these are doctors and people that understand the basics of science from, the cell level up to the full body. And yes, we are professionals that are recommending certain things, but there's reasons why. And really getting that background information of who are you listening to, what is their background, and how to rely on that information. So I do think veterinarians are the best resource for pet owners. It's, there's a lot of conflict out there of vets being expensive or trying to sell things. And I think a lot of that's really unbased. It's not something that's realistic because veterinarians are compassionate. We do put so much of our own lives into doing what's best for animals and for people, and trying to get that trust and understanding of why we do things the way we do it is important for people to understand, to know that we are trustworthy for providing information. And yes, things change. Yes, there's differences in individuals and what everyone needs, but trying to work together to find the best solution for your animal is really important to work with the right people.
I totally agree. It's trust your vet. We're not just in it for the money. I think if I hear that, or that comment comes up one more time on a thread, I might scream. But I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I think the information you're putting out there is phenomenal, and I think it's in a digestible way, but also an informative and entertaining way. So I thank you for the time that you do, because you're not funded to do that. You're doing that because you truly care. So thank you for all the information you provide our pet owners, and thank you for taking the time today to chat to me. It's been a really, really interesting conversation, and I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and everything that you're doing with the podcast and everything as well.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we'll get to chat again.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode on the Pause and Effect podcast. If you found the discussion helpful, please like, share, and follow our podcasts. Don't forget to leave us a comment or review. We love hearing from our listeners. Remember, you can listen to us on your preferred podcast platform. Welcome back to Just for Pets. You're with Dr. Kara.
Hi, Doc. It's Jackson the Jack Rossi here, and boy am I itchy.
Are you on a hypoallergenic diet?
Hyper what now?
Changing to a special diet will really help. And Just for Pets have a massive range. And flea and tick medication, special shampoo.
Ooh, how quick can you get some?
Order today and we'll deliver pronto.
I feel better already.
Justforpets.co.za. Vet approved, pet adored. Get it all to your door.